Welcome. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur.
I'm Sylvia Earle. I'm an oceanographer, National Geographic explorer, founder of Mission Blue, and I am an ocean elder. Thank you, ocean elders, for sponsoring this program.
And this is our show, Dive In, where we host informal and open conversations with the ocean community on topics of wonder and interest. We're really glad to be back and hope everyone has had some time to get out of doors. You can ask questions by putting them into the Q&A box as we go through the conversation, and we'll get through as many as we can towards the end of the program. And we'll also be adding some links along the way for further information. And before we get underway today, we want to remind everyone that the world
is
blue. And today we are so grateful to be joined by Rhett Butler, founder and CEO of Mongabay, a nonprofit focused on environmental journalism founded in 1999. Welcome, Rhett.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. So we want to know, like, what was your inspiration really for getting going in this space, in this journalistic environmental space?
Yeah, so I have some slides. It'd be good to jump into those to
let's
create with
share your
visuals.
screen.
Great. So I'm just going to share real quick.
And bravo for getting off a plane from Switzerland to join us.
I know. It's across time zones and everything. It's amazing. Thank you so much.
21st century human.
Yeah. This is someone else we know.
Again, thanks for having me. So yeah, I can jump in here. Does that look okay to you all?
Yeah, looks great. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, one of the first questions people ask me is why I started Mongabay. And so it really began early in my childhood. I've always been very interested in nature, but especially reptiles and amphibians.
Yes.
And yes, I had the great fortune of having a mother who's a travel agent and a father who traveled a lot for business. And so my family prioritized travel growing up. And we would go to places like Venezuela instead of Disneyland.
Wonderful.
And so since tropical rainforests have the greatest diversity of reptiles and amphibians, I would always lobby to go to the rainforest. And so the first time I had a real in-depth rainforest experience was when I was 12. I went to Eastern Ecuador, and we stayed in a fairly traditional indigenous community. And I had an incredible time there. I would play with the kids my age. We'd go look for frogs. Came back to California, and several weeks later, there was an article in the newspaper about an oil spill that had happened upriver from the area I'd visited. And so that meant it was affected by oil. And so I wondered what happened to my friends in the forest and the animals. And so that's what moved me from someone who was into cool frogs to someone who tracked environmental issues in the news. And it also showed me the power of media to both inform and inspire people.
True.
That's amazing. You know, it's like, I think we've all seen, at least I have remember kind of growing up sort of the same way and getting to visit places and seeing the wildlife, and then having something really devastating happening through development or overdevelopment or accidents. It's just
and never before in history has there been so much of the consumption of nature to foster human purposes, converting nature everywhere, land and sea. We see it on the land. We've largely been oblivious or not paying any attention or don't care
when it's underwater.
Yeah, definitely. So the thing that actually led me to action was very much tied to consumption. So a few years later, I went to Borneo. This forest actually, very beautiful, full of all sorts of incredible wildlife, including great reptiles and amphibians
and insects.
Beautiful insects. So again, a spectacular forest. Had an amazing time there. I came back and I kept in correspondence with the scientists I'd met there, and I learned the forest is going to be pulped to make paper. So went from something like this to this, and now that area is an oil palm plantation. So
oh no,
direct consumer products.
You can't just be quiet because you know the before and you see the after.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't just let it slide by
No,
without doing something.
just so egregious.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So I decided the destruction of that forest basically inspired me to try to raise awareness. So when I began college, I started writing a book about tropical rainforests. Uh, so my major had nothing to do with this, but that's what I was passionate about. So I worked on the side. And thanks to some credit from high school, I was able to finish college a year early. So I spent that year finishing the book. I found a publisher. Publisher came back and said, "Okay, we're interested in publishing this, but we're not going to have the budget to put color photos in it." And so to me, that defeated the purpose I was trying to do, which is convey the rainforest and why we
Yeah.
should,
Yeah.
right? So,
Wow.
We need the words, but the images can speak for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, they're so fundamental to the story, and they really do tell that direct correlation between how it was and what has happened, and
the loss,
the story of the loss.
Yeah, I mean, so definitely. So then, I realized I didn't write the book for money. I wrote it for impact, and so I just took the text and put it on this new thing called the internet, so people could read it for free. And so that became Mongabay. And so the name is derived from an island off Madagascar. So I changed the spelling. So if there are any references to Mongabay, it would just be clearly the website because it's the only Mongabay on the internet at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the logic. The reason I chose Nosy Mongabay is it's kind of like my idea of paradise. So it's an island covered with rainforest, surrounded by humpback whales who are calving. There's coral reefs nearby. It's full of all sorts of amazing creatures, including great frogs and lizards, and of course lemurs.
Oh yeah.
It also had an interesting story arc where it had been heavily degraded by logging hundreds of years before, and yet the forest rebounded. It was also at one point seen as being kind of a Noah's Ark for this unusual lemur that was thought to be going extinct. It turned out the scientists hadn't really talked to local people, so they weren't aware of how widely distributed this lemur was.
So common.
Right. So it's not an uncommon story.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they introduced the lemur to this island, but it turned out there were lemurs very widespread in Madagascar, so that didn't happen. But there's kind of like a bunch of interesting stuff going on around this island. Plus, it was beautiful, so that's how I chose the name. But I wasn't going to run a website for a living, so I got a real job in Silicon Valley. But then the website started to grow popular, and so I decided to quit my job and pursue my passion. And so one of the first things I did when I was doing Mongabay full time is I created a section for children that was adapted into about 40 languages by native speakers. Now, this is before Google Translate. Of course, I started to take pictures everywhere I traveled, so I've now posted about 250,000.
Beautiful.
Sorry, what was that?
And so it's just beautiful to get that sort of mosaic of all these images and then it's absolutely fundamental to have the multiple language component, even early on, because it helps break down the barriers for people and leads them to take more local action, and then getting the global support behind it.
But most travel that is celebrated is very human oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the other creatures who got here first.
Right.
You've been there.
They tend to bypass and think of as inconsequential, but you make them, you bring them right up front. You can't ignore them.
So then I also decided to start a news service. And so this is what Mongabay is best known for now, but I started in order to address what I saw as a gap in the market between advocacy publications are basically telling you what to do and think, and mainstream media, which didn't do as much coverage as I would like on the intersection of people and nature. So started that, and that's why I'm here today. That's what Mongabay has become known for. But the first 2 years is just me in my apartment, writing articles. It's very modest.
It's incredible. And this is a great topic that you've got here on this slide is this whole issue of sunscreens, right? Um,
Who knew?
who knew that what impact they have not only on our biggest organ, on our skin,
Or on the ocean.
but in the ocean. Or I have people come into our shop and they're shopping for sunscreen for their trip, and we have kind of reef safe ones and so forth. But it's never really occurred to people that they should think about a sunscreen that is not harmful to aquatic life.
The ocean is so big.
They just spray something on and go, and they don't think about where does it what happens to when you're out snorkeling or diving, or if you're not a water person, when you just come home and take a shower after you play soccer or whatever activity you're doing, it still ends up in the water supply and in the ocean.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's good to know. I mean, it's good to see the awareness campaigns though. When you go to, the beach in a lot of places now, you'll see signs about what kind of sunscreen is safe. So do appreciate that outreach.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know, you can't care.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the first few years of Mongabay it was just me. Eventually, I brought in an intern. His name was Jeremy Hantz, and then hired him as a staffer. So there were two of us. But there were all these ideas I had that wouldn't be supported by an advertising-based business model for. And so one of those ideas was starting an Indonesian language news service. So that may sound kind of odd, but I had done a lot of reporting in Indonesia, and I knew that a lot of the issues around resource degradation and deforestation and over-extraction were related to corruption and mismanagement of natural resources, and that there wasn't a news service in Indonesian that spanned the country. So it tended to be very localized. And so I thought if there was such a news service, it could increase transparency and therefore accountability and might help move the needle towards something more sustainable. And so formed the nonprofit in order to do that. I had no background in fundraising or correct connections to wealth, and I had never managed an organization before. So this was truly a big step, but decided to try it.
We're glad you did.
And yeah, so I managed to get a grant, and then I announced to the world that I'd be starting an Indonesian language news service. And a whole bunch of people in Indonesia knew about Mongabay, so they applied, went over there, interviewed a whole lot of people, ended up hiring a team. We launched the website about a month after the team started. And then within a month of launching the website, it was the most popular Indonesian language news service. And even the president of Indonesia was referencing the site within a couple months. So
incredible.
It took off really quickly.
Well, everything in human society starts with somebody doing something. When it's out there, everybody takes it for granted that it exists, but often there isn't understanding of how things get started.
That's
Usually
right.
Somebody comes up with an idea that they just won't let go of it. And here's one great example.
100%.
Gets traction, gets contagious.
And it takes off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it did take off. And then I decided to apply the model to Mongabay as a whole. So I donated all those articles I'd created over the past, about 10 plus years, I guess, to the nonprofit and just went full nonprofit, and then started to replicate the model in other places. So the next expansion lingually was Spanish for Latin America. And we're actually having our 10th birthday next week in Colombia. So I'll be there.
Fantastic.
And then we went to India, which is English, Hindi, and now Bengali, and soon to meet other languages. And then Mongabay, Africa, which is French, English, and Swahili. And we also have a team in Brazil. It's not a bureau yet, but we're continuing to expand.
Good.
Are you in China yet?
Not in China yet. We have a China strategy or Chinese strategy, but not sure when it will be implemented because China is uniquely tricky from a
Oh
journalistic
yeah,
standpoint.
But uniquely important too,
Yeah,
yeah,
especially for these messages.
right.
definitely. So do have a strategy, but we need to get it funded. So we're still waiting on that front.
Mhm. But it's really, in this global economy, we just see so many plants and animals that are just being kind of
Annihilated.
annihilated and trafficked
Yeah.
with this huge global reach. You like 4 million seahorses ending up in in medicine, powdered, ground up for powder, but where they come from, and how do you trace all of these intersections, and how do you really get awareness up to where people, consumers especially, will stop and think about where did these things come from.
Certainly. I think it's been exciting to see when there has been progress on that front. So some of the developments with like shark fin consumption and ivory, elephant ivory, shows kind of the promise of what can happen when there's dedicated effort and interest.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we stand today. Um, in terms of like what this looks like over time. Sorry, this is a year update now, but it's slow, steady growth, compound growth. So we're actually at about 140 staff now.
Wow, it's quite
Nice.
impressive, up from two in the apartment to
Yeah.
140. That's excellent.
Yeah. And the thing is when you have 10 or 20% growth a year and you have 100 staff, that ends up adding up to a lot of hiring.
Oh yeah, yeah, a lot of management too.
Um, this is a little bit out of date. We have about 1,100 contributors now. So this is actually 3 years old, I think. I need to update it, but our Africa presence is much stronger now. But you can see we have people all over the world. Our strongest regions are Asia and Latin America.
Hmm.
Um, but again, Africa's really scaled up quite a lot since this was last updated. And then in terms of readership, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but Mongabay isn't trying to necessarily be mass market. We're not so much a hearts and minds approach. We're really targeting key decision makers. That said, we do end up reaching a lot of people. So we've in March this year, we broke the monthly record for traffic, which dated back to the first month of the pandemic. I
Hmm.
honestly never thought we'd break that record, but we did. So that was exciting. That was, like 17 million visitors that month. But we've seen a very strong growth in terms of readership, which is very positive. And I should say this is just traffic to our website. So because we give away our stories for free, there's a lot of mainstream media outlets that are using our stories. So our reach is much greater than the people who could come just to our website.
Right, right. It gets kind of shared across different channels, and it kind of just becomes kind of this force multiplier.
Exactly. So I mean, I've been in Bolivia and opened the main newspaper there, and there's been a few page
Right.
manga based spread inside. So it's always nice to see.
Yeah, it's, it's very gratifying.
Be good if you could track that somehow, but
Yeah, it's really hard. We've tried, but yeah. So we're just happy it gets out there now. So if we want to break that down a little bit in terms of where we do reach people, our big three markets are the United States, India, and Indonesia. Um, so if we look at it a little bit different way, which is per capita consumption,
Hmm.
there are certain countries where we have a decently large share of the population reading our articles. So the Andean, Amazon countries, so Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, because it's a real hotspot for us. In Southeast Asia, Singapore and Cambodia are big ones. Um, so while we have a lot of readers in the United States, our share of readership is relatively low compared to the population. We're finding a lot of readership also in Oceania. So, and
Hmm.
I mean, the small island nations don't make the cut here because they're too small. But high per capita readership there as well.
Yeah. It's interesting to look at those as they also pertain to where you have your hope spots and
Right.
in some of these different countries, because it's another example of where people are kind of locally taking action and they're trying to amplify the message of why these places matter and how people can help.
And across the Pacific, the Polynesian cultures are certainly coming together to help restore their connections, I suppose, the long history that they share, and their focus on the ocean as their blue home, more than just these little dots of land. It's the ocean that connects them. Mm-hmm. It looks as though they're divided by the ocean, but actually it's the ocean that brings them together in places such as Tetiaroa, which is where the traditional leaders would often, well, not often, but every once in a while, once a year or so, would come together, traveling across that wide blue ocean in the open canoes. And now this just a revitalized sense of being ocean people, and much of their culture has been smothered by the 20th century and 21st century, and even before, and they're recovering much of that, and looking at the ocean with new eyes, with the new information that now exists that didn't exist for anybody until the middle of the 20th century. It's really so exciting to see what is now known that nobody could know before. Mm-hmm. And that's right where you are zeroing in about the nature of life that existed long before there were humans. And if we don't pay attention, we're going to lose. Well, we've already lost quite a lot, but we dare not lose anymore.
It's going to take that concerted global scale to really make it so. To turn, you always to say your trajectory is like, going down. You want to go up.
That's the opportunity that we have, because we know the way no one could know before how everything connects and the magnitude of the risks we now face, but also the knowledge. We know what to do. And it's just getting off our butts and doing something about it.
That's right. But that's where the communication piece and the journalistic piece is so vitally important, and the multilingual approach.
Yeah, and those who say, I'm just one person, I can't do anything. Look at Rhett Butler.
That's right.
He's just one little person.
He's just one guy, come on.
Well, so actually to that point, the Pacific is one of our priority areas for expansion. So we're hoping to get more of those stories out about that local agency and those solutions, as well as, the challenges. So my hope is that we're going to be significantly expanding our coverage in the region in the coming years. So
excellent.
Yeah. Big part of the world, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
So as I mentioned before, Mongabay is not necessarily trying to be a hearts and minds mass market publication. We're trying to reach key decision makers across in various sectors. So one of the most obvious ones is probably conservation practitioners, so people who are doing conservation. Mm-hmm. We're also targeting advocacy groups and activists, educators of all levels, people who work in the agencies and manage natural resources. So, Ministry of Fisheries, Ministry of Forestry, Ministry of Environment, people who work in international development agencies. So those, of course, are shrinking now, but historically they've been very important in terms of directing money to conservation. Mm-hmm. People who work in the private sector, managing commodity supply chains or thinking about investment decisions, philanthropy, journalists, and then people who are working to prosecute environmental crime or investigate environmental crime. So these groups tend to operate in silos. They often have their own jargon, use their own terminology. And so the way that we cut across those silos is by writing in a general interest format.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we end up with a much larger audience than just people in these sectors.
Right. So it just makes it much more digestible to larger audience.
You tell stories.
You tell story, yeah, and make them
They're
enjoyable to read. But it's also so interesting because when you look at something like the environmental crime and investigation piece, that those things so frequently tie out to other sort of nefarious things like drug trafficking or human trafficking or slavery or all these other things that kind of come around and connect people in different ways, but they still want to take action to make difference.
Yeah, and so when you're looking at an issue like that, often you have one core story or like an investigation of what the issue is, but then you come up with splinter stories to target specific user groups. So just for example, we did this investigation several years ago that was looking at this massive uh, palm oil plantation in Indonesia on the island of New Guinea. And during the process of that investigation, the team found evidence of this $22 million bribe. And so
wow,
that would just be a sort of a detail buried in the story, except that the team decided to do a standalone story about that bribe. And so they went and they talked to investigators in the US Department of Treasury about how you would actually prosecute a case around this corruption. And so they did that and basically laid out the breadcrumbs of how you would prosecute it. And then sure enough, the Indonesian Anti-Corruption Agency launched an investigation. And long story short, the permit for that plantation was eventually revoked, which meant it was canceled. So that was, a very targeted piece of journalism that helps contribute to an outcome.
Yeah,
you get results.
Yeah, and we know that like other pieces like the eco or sustainable tourism is really on the uptick in many of these areas. But if they're not protecting actively the water, the air quality, the plants, the animals, the ocean surrounding all these systems together,
they've served the animals on their menu.
Oh my God! Well, that happens especially with fish, as we know.
Special seafood dinner.
Yeah, the special seafood dinner.
From local residents.
Terrible, but it really has this huge economic impact on the area where they start stripping back the natural services, the natural protections from bigger, stronger storms. They get incredible disaster that happens and wipes out people and nature both.
Yeah.
And then what happens to their local economy? So when the people understand that these things all connect, it really can help them make better decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to widen the lens a little bit and talk about some of a few broader issues that we're navigating at Mongabay, but I think just generally, whether you're a news organization or a scientist communicator, these are things you also have to deal with in the current world. So
yeah,
I'm just going to highlight, I mean, there's a lot, but I'll just highlight three as I guess as a starting point. So one is the concept of news avoidance. And so there's an annual survey that's done by the Reuters Institute, which looks at a variety of parameters around news consumption. And the way you can think about news consumption is it's a proxy for people consuming information. So it's sort of a type of information, but it's information nonetheless. And so what they found is news avoidance is rising. So in this chart, the red line shows, or the red dots show how many people say they actively avoid the news. And then the line is just the trend. And then the blue line is trust in news. And so these are essentially inversely correlated. So as trust in news goes down, news avoidance is also going up.
Wow.
And so globally across the 48 countries they've surveyed, the survey that, or the report that came out this year found that 42% of people now actively avoid the news.
Incredible.
And so if we look at it per country basis, it's just like a random selection of countries that are part of the survey. You see, in almost every country, it's increasing. And why do people avoid the news? So that's on the right side. About 40% of people say it bums them out, which is not surprising. There's
Oh yeah.
so
It's a
many
lot.
crises in the world. Yeah, so shouldn't be. And if you go down the list, there's other things which tie into that whole negative effect. But 30% of people say there's too much coverage of conflict and war, for example, and 29% say there's too much political coverage. So get the idea. So we understand why this is happening. But what I think is really interesting from the standpoint of where we work is looking at news avoidance by political affiliation and the types of topics that people are avoiding. So number 2 on this list is climate and environment news. And so what you'll see here is that 64% of people who identify as being on the right, which in the context of the US is conservative, say they avoid climate environment news. And so if you're trying to reach people who are key decision makers in government or private sector, you need to think about other ways to get them to still
Engage
with this information. And
Yeah.
so if you go further down the list, you'll see things like business, finance, economic news, security news, science. So people on the right still consume that kind of information. So if we look at an ecosystem like the Amazon, talking about it in terms of climate is not a great way to engage people across political spectrum. But if you look at the Amazon in terms of the water it generates and how that affects the economy, that might be a better way. And so if the Amazon tips to a drier ecosystem, you might see higher energy prices, you might see higher food prices, might see higher water prices because the water won't be getting to the agricultural heartland of South America, won't be fueling the hydroelectric dams, won't be reaching cities. It'll get hotter. For the oceans, I think you can. Sorry, go ahead.
The climate story that you're trying to tell to some people is more effectively told as soybean futures, to some of the others that people say, oh, should I put my money over here? Am I getting where's my ROI? They're just kind of looking at it as a cost benefit, and seeing that, if you're not taking care of the place, it's to your disadvantage financially.
Yeah. And so for oceans, for some people, blue carbon might resonate, but for others, it might be blue economy. It's the way to think of it.
Yeah. So it's really a nuance of being able, and a skill to be able to kind of take your core story, but being able to kind of, like you say, show it through a different lens.
Yeah.
At least get them through the door.
At least, yes, exactly. Get them over the threshold.
So a second big issue that we're all navigating is around lack of trust, but whether that's fake news or AI generated slop. And so in this ecosystem, messengers are often as important as the message, if not more important. So the people who are delivering the message is absolutely critical. And so again, these are trusted messengers because in the world we live in, facts don't go as far as they once did. People may not trust them. They may want to just hear what fits their worldview. And so this was a graphic that got a lot of attention a few years ago.
Wow.
It's basically showing influencers, most of whom are US oriented, by their political lean as defined by Media Matters. And the point here is that the big red dots are bigger. And so red is leaning conservative. And so one of the responses to this was on the blue side was we need to make the blue dots bigger. But I actually think that's not the best approach because it's very difficult to build up the blue dots. It's very hard to build an audience make it influential, and on the left there tends to be a lot more fragmentation.
Mhm.
So another way to think about this is how do you meet people where they're at? So how do you get Joe Rogan to talk about the importance of the Amazon or saving or protecting oceans? Um, and so again, it gets back to that framing of thinking about how do you meet someone across the political spectrum, um, and get them to care about the issues that we care about.
Right.
And they should care about. They just don't see it. It's because taking care of your life support system, if you like to breathe, listen up.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly like key factors that should be sort of apolitical.
Yeah.
Fresh air, drinkable water,
place to
live, soil that you can produce,
being safe.
Right?
I mean, it's the biggest security question we now face is planetary security, and we're failing. If people don't appreciate our impact on those systems that keep Earth habitable, we're going to miss the best chance we'll ever have to reverse the current decline. And this should not be blue or red or pink or orange or purple or anything. It's just everybody should find the common ground. You can disagree about 1,000 things, but you have to agree that first you have to live, and if possible, live well.
Yeah. Maybe if we just eliminated air conditioning in Washington, D.C. for a week or so.
Or like turn off the water.
Yeah, like a little reset switch,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dive in, but it just seems so logical.
It's a good point. Yeah.
It's frustrating.
But I think that's what you are doing.
Yeah.
You are featuring things that have broad appeal.
You really do. And I'm thinking about some of these sectors that, they've got the great big investment in a big beachfront mansion, down in Florida or along the coast somewhere. They should really be concerned about the bigger, stronger hurricanes that might wipe that out entirely. Or insurance companies, same thing. They should be kind of thinking about what are we really investing in, or what are we going to back as insurers or bankers, financiers,
or sea level rise, tiptoeing. It's inevitable. The places that are right on the beach. Look in the past to anticipate the future.
Yeah, we do fail to look back often.
So then the last trend I wanted to highlight, which I think which really resonates with your work, Sylvia, is the crisis versus agency and solutions. So as we mentioned, people are primarily avoiding the news because it bums them out. They get depressed by it, they feel overwhelmed. So what's interesting is among people who identify as news avoiders, the top two things types of news that they still engage with are positive and solutions. And so this makes sense. And so we're trying to do more, predating this data coming in, honestly, we're trying to do more solutions-oriented reporting at Mongabay. So it's not just doing solutions for solutions' sake. It has to be actually grounded in reality. It's not greenwashing. And so you have to apply a level of rigor to ensure that these are actually solutions, but it's important. And so what's interesting is, a couple weeks ago, I guess, I did an analysis of the 100 most read articles on Mongabay in English for the first 6 months this year. And 73% of those top 100 stories had a title that conveyed either a solution or a sense of agency, whereas only 21% of the top 100 stories had a title that invoked crisis or emergency without a solution or agency.
Not just setting the world on fire. This is what happens. This is what you can do.
Right.
Yes.
This is what people are doing.
Yeah.
Even if people don't have solutions yet, just conveying that people are trying to do something is a way to engage an audience. And so this data actually surprised me because I didn't think it would be quite this stark. I don't also know if this is across the world or just Mongabay's audience, but I found it very interesting.
Yeah, very much so.
And so I think something like climate change is kind of embodied in this. So the idea of people, a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed by climate change. So there's eco anxiety. It's a crisis so big. It's like, what do I do to address it? And you know, addressing climate change does require transforming energy systems and economic systems. It's become very political in the US context, so it's people feel almost a state of paralysis around it. Whereas if you look at something like cleaning up a local creek, the water gets clearer, the fish come back, plant some trees, the air temperature goes down, you hear birds singing. It's something very tangible that anyone can see, and it's tends to have more bipartisan support. It's a little win, and so it's those little wins where you can build momentum for more systemic change. So I think like at a moment like this, it's really important to recognize those little victories and just understand how useful it is for helping people overcome that anxiety and navigate this very difficult moment that we're all facing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree because we've seen like the movements that they start off with I don't know, like a small neighborhood that maybe they all collectively decide they're going to get certified as a homegrown national park, or they're going to join the Native Plant Society or consult with this, or just do these local action things, or do a coastal cleanup on a regular basis and invite other people to join them. And it does kind of have this sort of uh, grassroots feel to it that I think people still really can rally around, and then lead by example. And with social media, and um, they can tell that story themselves and kind of help inspire others to take action, incremental though it may be.
So I think I'll stop the slideshow at this point and maybe it open it up for conversation. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. And we do have some questions in the queue. I'm going to open those up too. Yeah, excellent. So um, I want to ask you, do you have like a tip line for people if they see something that's going on? Is there a way for them to just kind of reach out to you and say, hey, this is a topic you should really be uh, looking at, and how can we get you to cover it?
Yeah, so a large share of our story ideas come from the world. People sharing things that are happening in their neighborhood or issues they're coming across in their day-to-day life. And so, yeah, we have a directory of our staff online with our contact information. And so, um, reaching out to someone who covers a topic that's related to whatever the issue is or operates in that geography where the issue's arisen, that's a great way to get that story on their radar and potentially have them do a story about it.
That's outstanding. And Caroline says, thank you for sharing the extraordinary pictures of wildlife. Did you photograph all of them? And what is your favorite creature and why?
Yeah, so I've posted about 250,000 photos on the website. I have another 60,000 that I haven't gone through yet from the past couple of years. It's getting harder and harder
That's as
to
bad
get
as
to
her
the
iPhone.
photos. Yeah, so because I also have to caption them, and the captioning them
That's the
is
hard
truly a
part.
painful process. So it's yeah, but my favorite animal, so I mean, I still love frogs, especially tree frogs. But I guess if I have to pick an animal, I would say maybe the pangolin. I just think the
Oh,
penguin's such a fascinating creature.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it is hard.
Yeah, I saw those guys recently described as an artichoke with a tail,
Yeah, well, that works.
or pine cone, but they are very, very cool animals, and most trafficked animal in the world, I believe. Still,
Yeah, although I understand there's been some progress.
yeah,
I mean, there's still heavily trafficked, but the situation is getting a little bit better.
that's good. That's what we want to hear. Stephanie asks, what kind of thoughts do you have on the future of journalism? With the way journalism has been under attack, what kind of roadblocks have you had to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. So journalism is definitely in a hard spot right now. So the operating model is more challenging than ever. And I just saw data a couple days ago, which showed there's been a big decline in traffic for a lot of news outlets. And so that's just going to lead to further layoffs. So
Mm,
it is very challenging. I think also the rise of AI is also a challenge because you have platforms like Google that are now summarizing stories, which means people don't have to visit the site anymore, or the
mm,
actual news source, and so that's depriving advertising-based websites of their revenue, which is also not good.
right.
I do think that in the age of AI, that journalism is more important than ever because it's the only source of new, credible information that's entering the ecosystem. So again, it is a tricky spot. And then, as Stephanie noted, it's also a dangerous time to be a journalist. So a
Yeah.
lot of governments are cracking down on journalists, persecuting them. It's not just the US, it's really all over the world. Journalists are being killed. So yeah, it is a very challenging moment, and I wish I had a more hopeful hopeful view on this. I will say that it's not 100% bad. I mean, one of the interesting things has been the rise of big data and open source intelligence, which has been quite valuable for journalism. It's new platforms and methodologies emerging, but I think overall it is a very challenging um, climate right now for journalism.
Yeah.
Well, it's 21st century communication is one of the best reasons for optimism, for hope. Knowledge gets out there. I think when I was a child, there was no internet, of course, and just the information alone. No one had been to space to see Earth from high in the sky or from deep in the sea, but the ability to share information as it happens instantly around the world, to bring everybody up to speed with the, the new insights about microbes, about the, the changing, call it temperature, if you will, because it's real. And well, a lot of disinformation and misinformation and directed lies are out there. I mean, nonetheless, the truth ultimately comes through. It just does. You can't ever give up on the laws of nature
Hmm.
because in the end they win,
Yes, they do.
no matter what the current administration anywhere in the world might think. And often it's a lack of knowing that causes people to go astray. So everything that you can to keep, well, and sometimes what you report as the latest new discovery turns out with subsequent exploration to be not exactly what you thought it was. And the good news is that when a scientist realizes he's wrong or she is wrong, that's really exciting because you get closer to the truth. But it's it's a process. It's like, but I would not go back to not knowing or not having the means to communicate that now exists. I really think the level of common understanding, even with 8 billion of us, and there were only 2 billion when I arrived,
Wow.
that the concern about getting enough people to really have that level of awareness, the, the truth about the nature of the world and our place within it. It is something that the kids of today know what Earth looks like from afar. They can talk to people on the other side of the planet. I could not. I could read National Geographic. I could go to the library and go to the encyclopedia to see what people in China look like. I mean, now I can go and I can share the view with others. And the fact that you are sharing the view honestly with an increasingly broad audience, that's really the kind of solid reason for hope.
Hmm.
and I applaud you for doing it.
Yes.
No matter what.
Well, thank you.
All right, couple more questions. Lena says, awesome work. Do you also have information of how your information and storytelling have impacted legislation in different parts of the world?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a impact tracking system because unlike an advertising-based media organization or outlet, our currency is really impact. And so we track both quantitative impact and qualitative impact. So legislation would fall under the qualitative impact. And so when we publish a story, we follow what happens after that story. And so we can't necessarily attribute all of some outcome to our story necessarily, but in some cases we have pretty strong evidence of the attribution. So we'll know that a key person read the story and then took some action. So we do have evidence of our work being used for that kind of decision making, whether it's lawmaking or law enforcement or policy development. We have a lot of examples. And so ultimately for me, that's what's most important about our work is that it is used by people and contributes to something real in the world.
Excellent. We have questions stacking up now, so we'll try to get through them all. Sarah is asking, any efforts to increase readership in the EU countries? The fishing fleets are some of the most damaging in the world, fueled by government subsidies. If Mongabay reporting inspires people to mobilize and change the status quo, would have a great win for ocean conservation.
Yeah, so we are doing more European coverage. Our European staff is actually increasing, and we've done quite a bit of reporting on marine fisheries and how that relates to European countries. So we've seen some impacts as well. So I do appreciate that feedback. Europe is still a smaller share of our coverage, but the total number of stories is increasing.
Mm-hmm. And it's an important piece because there's so much of the ocean. As Sylvia always points out, it's not just illegal fishing, but it's also legal fishing.
It's mostly legal fishing.
Yeah,
it's treating ocean wildlife as products. We kind of stopped killing songbirds for the marketplace. Yes, we still do kill birds, but not on the same scale that we're now killing fish. And fish are wildlife. These agencies that call themselves fish and wildlife, as if somehow creatures in the sea aren't wild. But it's a perception. And only when you know can you see through some of the foolish things we're now doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think also going back to the framing issue is a lot of the European fleet or just fishing fleets generally are very heavily subsidized. So whether it's fuel, so if you look at the economics of it, it's not necessarily commercially viable to.
Oh, it is not.
Sports in these industries. So that kind of reporting that could talk about the finances or economics of it can, be very important.
Yes, go economists. Need more transparency there. Mark asks, how much coverage is your organization giving to dam removal projects and the ecological impacts of their removal?
So we've definitely done quite a few stories about it. I mean, it's not a major beat for us, but in the past few months, I've just noticed several stories on that topic. So I'm in California. There's been several about the removal of dams on the Klamath, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we are covering it as a topic.
Excellent. And Sarah, how do we motivate people to move from small incremental actions, like changing a light bulb, to the big actions that we really need to take, like reducing the burning of fossil fuel?
Well, I mean, I think this this is a complex issue. So, part of the question is what an individual can do to stop burning fossil fuels. So, I personally could, switch my consumption habits or switch to an EV. But part of it is getting key decision makers to also make that switch. So, talking to politicians, putting pressure on them. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's complex because it's a much bigger system you're trying to change. And so an aspect of what I mentioned before is the concept of agency and what can you do right now today. And so changing a light bulb is something you can do today, but you can also contact your representative if you're in the US or if you're in a democracy, and let them know how you feel about these things. You can contact a company, their helpline and say, I wish you had a climate policy. So there are things you can do today,
Mhm.
even if it requires, systemic change. It's hard to deliver, but there's certainly a sense of agency with driving change in the world.
Yeah.
So it's also the decisions you personally make. If you're concerned, as you should be, about the scale of industrial taking of ocean wildlife, then why would you have a tuna fish sandwich? I mean, why would you support the market? Because it is the marketplace often that drives the killing of wildlife or the consumption of forests. I mean, know the source of what you're consuming, then make a decision that makes you feel good about the decision instead of being a part of the problem. That is a big part of the problem. People don't want to change themselves. They say, you have to do it.
Yeah. All right. Hermes, Mongabay, would you be interested in collaborating with or covering environmental documentaries that we are doing around the vaquita, the fight to preserve the extinction of the vaquita in the Sea of Cortez, and another related issue around jaguars in the Maya region of Mexico due to tourism development and deforestation?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, those are both topics that we cover quite a bit of. So um, they're certainly aligned with what we're interested in. It's hard for me to talk about the specifics of it, so
Yeah.
I would say go ahead and reach out, not necessarily to me, but to our video team would probably be the best. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Again, because those are both themes that we've done a lot of coverage of and plan to continue doing.
Excellent. Amy says, thank you for all the important work that you're doing with so many people now. Oops, wait, happened. My message here just shifted on me. Specializing in trusted news sources. I'm curious whether you've seen that reflected in the Mongabay audience. Have you seen the audience grow as a result of being a trusted news source? I'd love to hear how you're reaching people and building the readership.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to gauge intent, like necessarily why our traffic is increasing so much. Um, what is interesting or unexpected to me is we now see a lot of traffic from the chatbots, again, which is not what I would have expected, but ChatGPT is typically our third largest source of external traffic. Sometimes it's number two, which kind of suggests that those chatbots see us as a trusted source of information. Um, Again, it's not what I thought would happen, but um, another surprising thing is that the traffic coming from chatbots is typically 15 to 18% um, higher quality engagement than traffic coming from Google. So if someone actually clicks through on a link in a chatbot, they tend to scroll deeper and spend more time on a page than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a proxy, of course, but we are seeing a big increase in traffic this year. Um, can't exactly say why, other than we've expanded our coverage and are producing stories in more languages.
Excellent. Jean is asking, what is the main funding source for you and how has that changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, so the big change for us was moving from a for-profit model, which was advertising based, to a nonprofit model, which is based on donations and grants. And so that happened between 2012 and 2015. Since then, I mean, the majority of our funding comes from grants. So we have about 40 foundations that are funding us. And I've taken a very diversified approach, so we wouldn't be de dependent on any one funder. So we have the power of walking away or saying no to any funder. I took that approach because I recognize the power imbalance inherent in philanthropy. And I've seen many nonprofit media outlets collapse because they're too dependent on a single funder. Then we also get donations from individuals. So it's typically between 35 and 40% of our funding is from individuals. So that's what it looks like. We've been growing typically at 10 to 20% a year. So the
Excellent.
model's been working for us.
That's good. I guess the last and related question from Jane or Jana, what is the process of capturing the impact of Mongabay reporting?
Yeah, so again, our currency is now impact rather than monetizing traffic. So it's really important for us. That said, it's hard. So we have an impact tracking system that looks both at the quantitative side, which I mentioned. So it's like page views, syndication, social media activity. But the more interesting side is the qualitative, typically anecdotes, really. And so it's what happens after the reporting is done. And so just very simply, the way we look at this is we have a follow-up. Well, first of all, we're always listening. So feedback comes in from audiences, it comes from social media, it comes from other places. So we collect each one of those anecdotes. But then we also have an active process where if we do an investigation, then an editor would reach out to the people who produce that investigation on, say, 3, 6, 12, 24-month intervals to go back to sources that ask for updates. And through that process, it organically surfaces examples of impact or how information was used for decision making. And then all those anecdotes and data points go back into a database, which we then look at to assess impact and then also provide reports back to funders and for our annual report and things like that. But also we use it internally to understand how our journalism generally contributes to impact and where those key inflection points can be.
Excellent. Well, we have reached the top of the hour, actually slightly past, but a wonderful conversation. But before we close today, Sylvia and I would like to say thank you to Rhett and our producer, the Ocean Elders, and mostly to all of those out there in the diving community who show up and participate in these conversations with us. We are grateful to everyone, and water connects us all. Remain curious, spend some time out in nature. We are going to be back in September. We're taking our little summer holiday, so we'll be sending out a good reading list for people to enjoy in the meantime. And until then, remember, take care of the ocean.
As if your life depends on it.
Because it does. Thank you again, everyone. We'll see you in September.